It's not a condition of underwatering a lot of time. It can be, but most of the time it's the transpiration process of water coming from the roots up to the leaves, and the gravity of the water weight is holding them down. And so when we have big leafy plants, a lot of times in the afternoon, that gravity that we have is encouraging water weight and plants to hang, basically. And so what we try to do is reverse that process, and a lot of times people would use a shade cloth, and the shade cloth tends to be black and it cuts off vital light that we're looking for. So one way that we look at things is we try to use a polyweed diffused greenhouse cover. Most of the greenhouses that we sell, and a lot of the covers that people sell nowadays, is a polyweed. Films are something you can stick your thumb right through and it breaks fairly easy. Polyweeds are something that's a high-impact, tear-resistant material, and you can't see directly through it. And a lot of people thought that's great because it's private. I like the privacy behind it, and clear films and clear glass is really essentially the idea people are shooting for. But the privacy was great behind the polyweed. And so what we started realizing is people were using the polyweed for privacy, having a sealed greenhouse, and still having mold and pest and disease and problems because the greenhouse wasn't ventilated enough. As we started ventilating the greenhouses more by ridge vents, sidewalls, opening doors, or even hoop houses, leaving the end walls completely off and just rolling the sidewalls up like a poster and clamping them, PVC hoops do the same thing. What we're doing is avoiding the solar gain in the greenhouse, and at that time with the polyweeds, they're blocking out UVB. And UVB in particular is what really heats things up. It's not totally viable for growing in heat like this because as it increases, it becomes toxic for plants, and so they're not photosynthesizing, they're actually transpiring. And so at that point what we can do is block out UVB, avoid the solar gain, and at that time we're cooling the plants. We're not cooling the air temperature. We're giving the plants relief from the sun's intensity without the use of shade cloth, because again, shade cloth will block out more light than we want. And so the people that end up using clear films, glass, and even the films with frosted materials a lot of times have a high rate of transmission on the greenhouses. So that means they're actually getting so much light into that greenhouse, even when it's opened up, like I talked about, avoiding that solar gain, the plants have trouble cooling themselves naturally. A lot of times what they do is they go into abolic stress once again because they're not under a cover that's blocking out the UVB in particular. It might have a frosted look and privacy, but a lot of times what happens is you have a lot of solar gain on the leaf surface itself because there's 90% transmission and 30% diffusion, where the covers that we look at are 85% transmission and 100% diffusion. And so the diffusion process is actually taking a light particle and smashing it into more light particles. So we're actually gathering more light at the same time. And so we're taking away the sun's intensity, gathering more light particles, we're cooling the plants and the soil temperatures without the use of shade cloth or air conditioning systems. And then if we start to use some circulation fans like we talked about, as we're starting to cool myself down by blowing this across my, when a plant isn't transpiring in a negative way, it doesn't mean the moisture is gone. Just like us, I like to relate us to plants a lot of times. Other people get pissed about that analogy, but I think it kind of resonates well because if you blow air across me right now, it's going to make me feel cooler. It doesn't have to be air-conditioned air like I talked about. Same thing in a greenhouse with a large leafy plant. You blow air across the greenhouse in a circulation fashion with a circulation fan, not necessarily scattering, oscillating fans, but we actually move the air in a pattern so it creates more of a natural flow as if a breeze was coming through the greenhouse. And then we can actually start to see a cooling effect on the plants themselves and stay in a rather photosynthetic mode during high heat like today. And so that's where we see a lot of people get the great benefit of using these greenhouse covers and these techniques, because a lot of people have the pieces to the puzzle, but they might be choking things one way or the other, or doing something opposite of what I'm explaining. Because a lot of people hear what I'm saying, but they don't like the pill, and they don't all swallow it. And so I have a lot of people that come back to me next year and go, dang, you were right. Here's the pictures of that greenhouse with the films and and everything's a problem. And I've been to places like, Santa Rosa isn't too far away. They have high humidity a lot of times with the heat. The greenhouses I consulted there were all clear films, no ridge vents, relying on exhaust fans, and they had 67% mold losses. After I consulted with them and told them to reskin their greenhouses and get ridge vents and more natural airflow, they didn't come back and say they had any problems at that point. So I don't know if it was 100% success, but they didn't come back and say anything, and they actually, I get a little thanks here and there, but to me it was great results to hear that stuff. I was super stoked on it. Another great story that we have, and we can find this through light deprivation, now that we're moving on from the greenhouses, we can talk about light dep a little bit, because in 1992 is when I first moved to Arcata. I got out of high school, I went to Arcata, I hung out there for about 5 years, and I learned about black boxing at the time. I did a lot of traveling here to southern Humboldt, it's an hour away, and living in Arcata, and there was a lot of shows here at the Mateel as well, so we came to the Mateel quite a bit. But in that period of time, I met a lot of people that were doing a black box technique, and the reason they called it black box at that time, because nobody was really calling it light dep. You might have heard some versions of light depo and depro and things and whatever, but at the time black boxing was the reason behind it, is that people really went to Sears or wherever they bought their equipment for fridges and washers and dryers, and used those big cardboard boxes as a way to black box each plant individually. And a lot of times that occurred people to, obviously harvest early, but then there was the urgency to hurry up and get that product finished and out to the market, and a lot of times it wasn't the best. And so when light dep season came around in the early 90s, it wasn't the greatest time of the year. There wasn't award ceremonies or events like this going on, I can tell you that. And there wasn't in 2006 when this company was formed. There wasn't any dep festivals or awards for tarps or any of that kind of thing. It was just, hey, I've heard of that, it's a great idea, I know some people that do it. And so now as we get into the light deprivation technique, we really learn a lot about the plants, as we talked about before, because imagine, a lot of you probably do this, or people here, when you pull your light dep cover at 5:30 this afternoon, or say earlier in July, this type of weather, a lot of manual people pull 5:30, take off at 9:30, that way they can breathe all night. Otherwise, there's a lot of people that do the 7 to 7 thing, and that's kind of like turning on and off your lights or something, and your plants suffocate all night unless you have some breathability or someone to pull. Pain in the butt. So the manual people, 5:30, 9:30 type of thing, works great. But one of the things we learned from people in Humboldt a lot of times is when you pulled black plastic over those plants, it instantly turned into rain inside. There was water drop, dripping, all kinds of things. And if you didn't uncover them or ventilate in some way, it was going to cause problems, and the problems just kept going and going and going. So then we started selling a breathable blackout material. Many years ago, the breathable blackout material was all of a sudden a saving grace to a few people, especially in Garberville. I had a customer that's about, he says, 2,500 feet above Garberville, and he uses, I believe, hoop-style PVC metal or something like that. He didn't necessarily work with us for any of his greenhouse supplies. It was just for the blackout material. And he'd been using these, I think, for a long time, and was having problems with quality control due to the humidity buildup during pulling the covers. And so he bought the breathable material, and he said that when he pulled his covers at 5:30 in the afternoon, 2,500 feet above Garberville, with the breeze that he constantly got all the time, it dropped the temperatures that were normally 100 degrees outside or 95 like today down into the 70s. And so that right there was incredible to me, because dropping temperatures down when you actually pull a light dep cover, not increasing humidity and heat, to me was awesome. I was like, man, that's great. And he was, of course, a big fan for a long time, and we actually sold him a lot more fabric because it made the success of his system and what he was doing that much better. And so what we know then from that is that plants are transpiring at a high rate when they're pulling their light dep cover. If the breathable is going to help, yeah, in fact, you might not be in those zones, and you're not going to see the relief that guy had, but you're not going to get the water droplets on the roof because there's wicking involved. It isn't the plastic that's going to allow the droplets to form and come back down. The breathable material is going to let heat escape, and it's going to wick those droplets so that they can't fall back down. And that right there was a big point for a lot of people, and the ability to actually know the times that you're doing your light dep, it was critical too. So a lot of people started looking at the light cycles and the times that we have the sun by using lumen meters or light meters to actually see when we have light and when we don't have light, because it's a matter of 1 lumen to 0 lumens that a plant reacts, and our eyes are much more sensitive than a plant's eyes. So I mean, I've had a lot of people, and I don't sell this as, hey, skip days and have light leaks and that kind of thing, but there's a tremendous amount of light leaks that I've seen involved to get to 0 lumens, and the plants are okay. I've seen people skip up to 5 days intervals at different times because they can't get home to cover their plants, and some oddball things go on, and everything actually turns out okay. So I mean, the plants are much more forgiving in the state of light deprivation than indoor growing, because indoor growers in general, when you have a light leak, it's going to last as long as the lights are on. It's not going to go away. So if there's a hole, a door, or whatever the case is, yeah, the light leaks matter. But when you have light deprivation, if you pull your curtains at 5:30, or those people that pull them at 7, how long before it actually gets dark? not very long, and then it's over with, and the plants aren't going to freak out. So I mean, some of the critical stuff that I see people doing and the sophistication behind some of the manual systems is really cool, and I always encourage people to do the best they can. But it is amazing that what we've heard and learned since 2006 doing this light deprivation thing. So some of the stuff I do have to tell is stories of what we've learned and what we've heard, and other times I also am speaking on behalf of which way to guide people to do light deprivation for greenhouses, light dep material, times and things like that. And that's where I get back to where I'm probably preaching to the choir when I start to get into those details specifically here. So anybody's welcome to come to Grass Valley. We have a demo greenhouse set up with the breathable blackout material. It's on a control system, weather stations, sensors inside, outside. It has the breathable material. We also have a product called the breathable wall. And the breathable wall actually allows you to move high volumes of air without the light passing through. And our booth, wherever it is, because I just got here, I don't even know where our table is. I believe we have some breathable wall fixtures there for people to come check out. And so basically what that allows you to do is in some of our pictures and stuff that you'll see, literature and things, that we permanently black out the end walls on our greenhouses. Some cases it's the entire end wall where the doors are on both ends, and then other cases on our automated system it goes up to the blackout ceiling. The rest of the greenhouse peak has the corrugated polycarbonate that the light can get through. And so by permanently blacking out the end walls, some people go, well, that's kind of crazy, I lose a lot of light. It's amazing how much light you don't lose that close to the greenhouse with the angle of the sun. And if you're doing light deprivation, you're pulling your curtain early anyway, so you're going to be okay. The best benefit of having permanently blacked out end walls is less stuff to cover and deal with. A lot of people will do 3-part greenhouse systems where they'll pull the cover over the main greenhouse and do the end walls separately. Other people will do an entire bubble in the greenhouse, and depending on how big the greenhouse is, the material gets bigger, harder, and more cumbersome. And so by doing this on the end walls permanently, we do alleviate some of the constant adjustments and dealing with and whatever the struggles could be on the manual side of things. On the automated side of things and the manual side of things, the benefit of the permanently blacked out end walls is to be able to put these breathable walls over our intakes and exhaust fans. So then we can actually activate the exhaust system while the greenhouse is blacked out. Many years ago, and up until 2 years ago now, before we started messing with this, there was no ventilation. Anybody that had exhaust fans were choking them out. We did start to tell people we should dig underground lines and bury pipe underground, and you can get these breather tubes snaking in and snaking out. And that worked okay, but for the most part, you still have a lot of heat that builds up. Heat always rises. So basically, the benefit of the breathable walls is that we can actually utilize the exhaust fans that we normally would have off in the daytime because they're running and spinning and the walls are open and we're not actually exchanging full air, to the point where when the greenhouse is closed up and we're more into that closed loop system, we can actually exchange that air. And the other highlight to that is that the blackout material is closed, so we also have it shady inside. And when there's shade inside, you have a better chance to cool something when the sun's beating down on it. So we have all these things in place for people to buy separately or to buy as kits through us. And they basically are to just help you through, the success of growing. So we help people with retrofit.